Welcome back to Just Vetting, where we go beyond the transaction to explore what really takes to build, buy, grow, and transition a successful veterinary practice. Today's guest is Chris Fuson. Chris has spent more than 3 decades helping veterinary practices succeed from nearly every angle imaginable. Before joining Patterson Veterinary Supply, Chris served as a practice manager, hospital administrator, and business consultant. Today, as branch manager for Patterson's tri-state region and a certified veterinary practice manager, he works alongside hundreds of veterinary practices, helping them improve operations, evaluate technology, grow profitability, and navigate an increasingly competitive marketplace. Chris, welcome to Just Vetting.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So, Chris, you and I have been friends a long time. And in preparation for today's interview, I was getting, looking back at your experiences. You've been in the veterinary space for 30 years. Walk me through that journey.
I think I started out probably the way a lot of people did in this industry. Cleaning cages, working at a
Right.
shelter. Volunteering. I was 14 years old, cleaning cages in a pet adoption shelter, and that turned into a paying job, and then one thing leads to another. Then I started becoming an uncredentialed technician, or veterinary assistant, however you want to phrase it. Did that all through college. Didn't quite make the cut for vet school, so went into the practice management side and did that for 5 or 6 years, and then started with Patterson September 2013 and haven't looked back.
Yeah, and you're right. I've been in the industry just a little bit over 15 years, and I'm like a newbie. There's so many colleagues like yourself. You're right. Has started at such a young age, and I hear the words, cleaning cages. I met with Dr. Peter Weinstein not too long ago. Same thing, just in professionals like that, cleaning cages. Had a passion very early on. You began, like you talked about, working inside hospitals, and then you moved into consulting. How has, with Patterson, how has seeing both sides of the industry shaped your perspective?
Working at a practice, obviously, you're working at one at a time, but you really get a feel for how that practice operates, how they, what their quality of medicine looks like, and having benefited from working in a few different practices, you could see that, the blinders come off a little bit, and you could see the different ways that, you can treat a simple solution. There's, for lack of a better expression, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Right.
So just learning about how other doctors might approach a similar situation and just seeing the different forms of medicine has been pretty amazing to see over, my 15, 18 years working in practice, and then just kind of magnifying that on the larger scale, getting into distribution.
And before you kind of move on more to what you're doing with Patterson, you mentioned your CVPM designation. What motivated you to pursue that?
I've always wanted to be the best at whatever it is that I'm doing, right? Whether it's a technician, practice manager, distribution sales rep, or a branch manager now. And I actually didn't even get the certification while I was a practice manager. I got it while I was a territory manager at Patterson because I knew that already at that point in my career as their distribution sales rep, I was already being viewed as a consultant for their practice. Mm-hmm. So I felt, it would be a good move to take it a step further and get some credentials behind that and show my customers that I'm serious about this. I'm serious about the practice management aspect, helping my customers manage their practices more efficiently and offer any insight that I could, whether it's, HR, inventory related sort of things. And Now in the branch manager role, I could do that not just for the customers that were in the territory that I used to manage, but now I've got 14 territory managers that have a CVPM that they can consult for any of their customers in their territories as well.
Right. And goes without saying, I think to your point, you go to your customer, it gives you um, that credibility right out of the right out of the
Right.
gate. One, and then two, just the experience and the knowledge and education that you have that you can apply it to that particular issue or give guidance to members of your team on a going forward basis.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was going through the CVPM process, and it's quite a process,
Mm-hmm.
um, through the certification, once I passed the test, I would always tell my customers that I was a practice manager doing a sales job, right? And that's because honestly, it never felt like I was selling anything a day in my life. It was always, working with them to see how I could help them position a certain product or piece of equipment to make it popular, improve compliance with pet parents, or using a new piece of equipment as a source of income generation. So, bringing that relevant experience definitely helped me out.
Having the experience working with hundreds of practices, you know, what's the distinguishing factor that separates, in your mind, great practices from the average ones? Is there any factors in that sense?
I'd say it's probably the willingness to adapt and recognizing that this is a changing industry and you have to adapt and move with it, adapt to newer technologies, the newer products, while not abandoning the history of the industry and the
Right.
products and medications that they've built their career using, but realizing that there are better products and technologies and people that just want to help them.
Those better products and technologies are going to make you more efficient. I think all of us, no matter what industry you're on, you're in, you got to be open to adapt. Technology that's coming. It seems like it's ever changing right now in our time. What about the mistakes or the biggest mistakes that you see going in and out of practices? That owners consistently make that can make them a better owner.
Um, they try to do too much. They don't delegate enough. I see a lot of practice owners that want their hand in making the schedule or want their hand in controlling the inventory. And I understand that those are two very big profit centers for a practice, but veterinarians, in my opinion, are serving their pet parents better when they're treating patients, right? When they're
Yeah.
seeing exams, when they're doing surgeries, and every minute that they're spending doing HR stuff or the schedule or inventory, those are minutes that they're not treating patients, right? So, my advice has always been find a strong practice manager that you feel comfortable delegating those responsibilities to so you can focus on what it is you want the vet school to do.
Yeah, and I guess it would follow too. That would go a long way to maybe preventing the burnout
Yeah.
that we hear a lot about within the industry, especially with owners who are you're saying wearing a lot and almost too many hats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
How have today's practice owners become better business operators than 10, 15 years ago from what you're seeing?
They're taking more CE classes that are business related. I have seen that. So I have to take a lot of CE to maintain my CVPM certification. And it's reassuring to see veterinarians in those sessions because that tells me that they are trying to keep up with the latest trends in the business, whether they're managing those items directly or if they have a practice manager back at their practice.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times when we're talking with either clients or other professionals like yourself, I think one of the biggest changing factors is the education and information that is available today that maybe wasn't available 10 or 15 years ago. It just seems like there's a lot of information out there available to practice owners and other professionals working within the hospital that they may not have been able to avail themselves to, especially now with the technology. Going online, you can see a YouTube video. They can watch, a video like this and get some information from somebody like yourself. That is, I guess, part of the technology that's changing as we go forward.
That's part of the technology. It's part of the education,
Yeah.
and just seeing how many different platforms that we can, get the message out and help practices thrive.
How about with KPIs? If in your experience, what KPIs should every owner be monitoring, even at a minimum?
At a minimum, you want to keep an eye on your labor first of all. That's your number one expense in the practice. So you want to make sure that your labor is managed efficiently. And number two, right behind that, is your inventory, right? Your cost of goods. So making sure that those two pieces are tight. And then, if we're getting into specifics within the practice, average pets per day per doctor, average client transaction, that sort of thing.
And how could they be monitoring all that? I mean, you're talking about, we talk about time. They don't have time. What could they be leaning into or using in order to be efficient? And that information, I would assume, is readily at their, or could be readily at their fingertips.
It could be.
Right, technology.
I'd say, working with your bookkeeper, you can track a lot of it on your P&L and your different financial statements, but also the practice management software that the practice is using will routinely track some of those KPIs as well.
Yeah. And what about opportunities, or what opportunity, following that, what opportunities do you see owners leaving on the table today that, if they were more diligent, or maybe had a practice manager in place monitoring the hospital, that they would be more productive and more efficient?
Yeah, I think if, you're doing scheduling and inventory and it's taking an hour a day or 4 hours a week, that's a few more appointments that you can put in the books, or a couple more surgery procedures that you could be doing. And also, I was just on a CE webinar earlier today and learned that AI scribing is the number one AI tool that's being acclimated into vet medicine today, according to the AVMA. And that's just one more thing where if you're not, if you don't have to spend an hour at the end of the day putting in your medical notes, because it's all getting recorded as you're speaking, again, that frees up some more time to, see more pets.
Yeah, I was talking with a client about that, a couple months ago, and she was telling me how beneficial that technology is, and also, you can even provide more information to the client. And I was telling her I went to get a physical recently with a new doctor, and he put his phone, brought his phone in, and he put it on the table. He goes, "You mind if I record this?" And I said, "No, not at all." And it did the exam, and later that day, or maybe it was even a following day, I got an email, and it kind of laid out everything we talked about in a great, which I wasn't used to getting that kind of information in the past. And he's able to listen. You're able to listen to the talk with the client, and you're a lot more hands-on. You're not worried about writing down all your notes and everything like that. It's great technology.
And we're even seeing the AI now in not just the scribe tools, but in radiology as well. You can get a consult back from a virtual radiologist in minutes, as opposed to waiting a few hours if you're sending it out to a radiologist through different lab pieces, in-house lab. So, the sooner you can get an answer or diagnosis, the sooner you can begin treatment, the sooner that pet gets better faster,
Yep. Patterson, the more I talk to you and your colleagues, the more I'm amazed at the breadth of what Patterson does within the industry. And it's often viewed as just a distributor, but your team, as you and I've talked about, provides much more than products. How do you describe what Patterson does in Patterson role today when you're talking with potential clients or other professionals?
I kind of look at us like we're consultants. We can provide a lot of business solutions. Oh, by the way, we can also sell you everything that you need for your practice to function. So certainly not to minimize that. The sales are what uh, you know puts the bread on the table, but I take a lot of pride in everything else that Patterson does, whether it's events like GPS to bring education for doctors that are looking to open up a practice for the first time. We have dedicated people just for technology, dedicated people just for capital and digital equipment. So our sales reps don't have to be the jack of all trades, the master of none. They
Mm-hmm.
can kind of quarterback depending on the situation and pivot to a different expert when it's appropriate to do so. But just the other solutions that we're able to provide, whether it's um, assisting with inventory or credit card merchant services. We just started with DVM Grow, a GPO, a little over a year ago, and they're able to provide some ancillary benefits to practices as well, such as an employee assistance program, marketing pieces, things like that. So knowing that we can touch all the corners of the practice and help them not just buy more stuff from Patterson, but to help them grow and see more patients and be a more efficient and successful veterinary practice, that's extremely rewarding.
Talk to me a little bit more about the educational components that Patterson provides. I know you mentioned GPS, you mentioned DVM Grow. Talk to me a little bit about more where those originated, how they, no pun intended, been growing, and the impact they're making on those who attend those type of events.
Sure. So I would say everything was probably rooted in Patterson Veterinary Academy. So Patterson Veterinary Academy is our online database of education, and it's for everybody in the practice, whether it's somebody that just started, somebody who's been there for years, receptionists, technicians, doctors. There's communication, practice management training. There's medical courses. So there's something for everybody, and I think from that we recognize that there wasn't any formal education on what to do when you're looking to open up your own practice. So Peter, you and I have a very similar network, right? We have our legal representatives, we have you know bankers, we have real estate folks that we work with. Uh, how do we bring these people together and create a world class experience for these doctors to get the education that they need? Because you know they don't come out of vet school knowing how to open up a business or
Right.
how to run a practice, right? So, who better to bring them this information than us? So the GPS event, and I believe they've done over 30 now
Wow.
since the implementation. And, we help out with office design. We've designed over 1,100 veterinary practices through our GPS program. Um, and it's been a great way to kind of open up the doctor's eyes as to everything else that they're going to have to work with, and at least we're kind of giving them the heads up on the front end so they know what to expect. There's no curveballs getting thrown at them, and they have a better understanding of the path that they want to go. So wherever their mindset is going into the program, our
Mm-hmm.
goal is to kind of solidify that confidence, reassure them that they're making a terrific decision, and helping them grow their practice once they get open.
Yeah. No, I didn't realize it was that large, and it's been going on for that long. No, that long. It's great.
Mhm.
Um, you, independent practices. They obviously, all of us have seen that change. I think changed quite a bit over the last decade. Where, in your experience, and where we are now, where do you see independent practices um, heading?
Um, I think it's going to level out. I really do. The corporate acquisitions have slowed down a lot over the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years. Um, More often than not, what we're seeing now is renovations and
Mm-hmm.
expansions. They're kind of reinvesting in themselves versus acquiring additional locations. Um, and it's also reassuring, again, going back to GPS, we cap these events at 50 offices. So that's 50 veterinarians that are opening up their own practice on their own, right? They're not doing it through a corporate partner. And, we consistently sell out these events. So it's reassuring to see that the practice, the industry in that regard is still pretty healthy, and it's growing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm like a broken record. I use the word pendulum all the time, and I look back in January of 2023, at least from our experience with our team here. It's like when I think a lot of the pens or pencils got put down on the corporate end, because in a few years before that, everybody they're all jumping over each other to acquire practices,
Yeah.
and then you came into January. It drastically slowed. It's moving again. No, yeah, again, but at a much different pace, as you talked about. And we're doing. I say the pendulum. What we're seeing, it's a lot of it shifted back over to independent practices where you have so many doctors who are either starting up a practice. They're buying into their existing practice. The senior doctor's not looking to sell the corporate now. They're looking for ways to get practices down to their associates, where that kind of slowed down a little bit a few years ago, and we're seeing a lot more of that now. And to your point, opportunities. It's like that old Kevin Costner movie, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And how they're in their existing space in ways where like you said, they can either renovate or expand because the demand is there, which makes it exciting for guys like us.
And that's remarkable, and it's so true. We both live in New Jersey. I mean, you can't drive 10 minutes without finding 2 animal hospitals,
Right.
And as condensed as they are, and it's not limited to our geography. I see it all over the country. I believe there's something like 30,000 independently owned veterinary practices in the country,
30?
And for the most part,
Wow.
about that, they all do well.
Yeah.
So I know just where I'm at now, in a 20-minute drive, I could be at 7 different practices, and all of them are doing well.
Yeah.
So it's true. If you build it, they will come.
Yes.
And it's really hard to fail at.
Right.
I haven't seen one. I haven't seen one, to be honest. In my 30 years, I don't think I've seen a practice close down because they just weren't doing it right.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen close down or shut their doors, if you want to, it wasn't because the demand wasn't there. Just the doctor was a solo, ran his practice, didn't really think about succession planning. Now he or she's nearing 70, 75. I've clients that's older in their 80s, and
Yeah.
you know what? Rather than sell some this, I've had, and I could count on one hand where they've kind of just shut their doors and it's kind of maybe sold their client list or something like that, and that was it. But you're right. Otherwise, it's just the demand is always there. The hardest thing is trying to supply that demand with doctors, which obviously we're seeing a lot of good things going on with new schools opening up. So hopefully we're going to see more of that trend, impacting the industry over the next few years.
Absolutely, yes. I'm looking forward to Rowan's first class. Let's say graduation.
That's right. When is that going to happen? When is that?
I think this is the beginning of their second year, so probably 2 more years, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. If a young veterinarian asked you, someone who's been in the industry for 30 years, whether ownership is still worth pursuing, what would you tell them?
Absolutely. With the kind of debt that they're graduating with. And I think that's part of why we're seeing such a surge in independent ownership, is because they realize that they're not going to get out of this mountain of debt as an associate. So what I think the most common trend I've seen, just kind of just scanning the room at GPS, is they're younger. They're probably in their 40s, and maybe about 2/3 of them have been working for a corporate entity for 3 or 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they either decided that it was their time to go into ownership. They found the right opportunity, or they realized that they didn't want to be a part of corporate medicine anymore, and they wanted do something on their own.
Yeah. We talked to quite a few of those types of individuals, and what I've even seen over the last couple of years, you get a lot of business people coming into the industry and partnering up with different veterinarians. And I just talked to a new client earlier this week, husband and wife. She's been a doctor for a number of years now. He's a businessman, and they want to create their own hospital, and they're excited about it. And they get to work together, and they're going to build it from scratch. All the things that we're talking about, kind of all put it together. Which is pretty cool. It's nice. I like to see that, watching it from what I call the cradle to the grave and everything in between, which is pretty cool.
That is exciting. Like I said, it's always exciting to see a doctor deciding to take the plunge and go for it on their own.
Yeah.
And when their spouse is involved, also knowing that they have a business background but they don't have a veterinary background. That's where I know where we can have an impact, because we've got a lot of resources behind this. But hey, you're coming in with your business background. Let's help shape that into veterinary business background.
Right. You talk about, you don't see him fail. We do have those conversations too, because, better than anybody, you're going to start up a practice, you have the availability to borrow up to, now it's almost $900,000 to start up the practice, start a business with no clients, and, plus you got debt. I mean, and you know what? They do it and they succeed, and they, beyond expectations, they succeed. It happens.
And they're in the black almost always less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Less than 2 years are profitable. It's amazing.
Yeah. What excites you? Looking ahead, what excites you most right now about the future of veterinary medicine?
The growth. I know there's a lot of change coming within the distribution landscape, but I also know that everything that we can bring to the table at Patterson. So while we're waiting for that landscape to kind of sort itself out, we're here, we're doing what we do, and we're excited to be helping our customers and bringing them new products, new technologies, new solutions, and just helping them flourish.
How about, on that same kind of concerns, any concerns that you have about the future of veterinary medicine?
Some of these larger online platforms are trying to squeeze into our market a little bit, and I get it, capitalism, right? But, at the same time, I don't want people to compromise quality for convenience.
Yeah. You mentioned change in a lot of change coming in distribution. What can you share any of those, or you can talk about any of those changes that you're seeing?
Just some of our competitors are merging or looking to merge.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting, 9, 12, 18 months, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Where, for our listeners that are here, they wanted to, reach out, connect with you, learn more about Patterson Veterinary Supply and the resources that are available to them. How would they go about doing that?
PattersonVet.com is the easiest way to kind of see everything that we have to offer. If you don't have an online account, you can get one set up through the website, and it can also direct you to your local territory manager.
And Chris, if you're not, if a listener is not an existing Patterson customer today, they'll go on. You recommend they go online first, take a look, learn a little bit more about Patterson, or even reach out to one of your colleagues at any of the conferences. You guys are at all the conferences all the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
All the conferences. I know I'll be at New York Vet this coming October, and I'll be at the VHMA conference in Reno in September as well.
And just to tie the loop on GPS, and how do you get invited to a GPS? Does that invitation go out to your existing customers, or how does a practice owner find out about that event?
A few different ways. It's the invitations actually are extended by our territory managers and equipment specialists, and it's doctors that they get introduced to from a variety of means. It could be a referral from you, it could be a referral from a financial lender, real estate, equipment vendor, or sometimes an associate will pull us aside on one of our routine clinic visits and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you have any information?
Mm-hmm.
Any way you can help me out?" So yeah, it really depends.
Uh, oh, before I let you go too, we talked about renovations and expansions, and I forgot to ask the question. What resources do you guys at Patterson offer if you're looking to renovate or expand or even build a hospital? Like what do you bring to the table?
We have two folks that work for our office design team, Mike Reynolds and April Cuellar, and they are brilliant. They can basically take something that you've jotted down on the napkin at a bar and turn it into an office design,
Wow.
complete with like a 3D rendering and, really take into consideration the vision that you have for your practice, and not just, create a box, but there's a pretty significant design questionnaire that the doctor fills out. And then usually I'd say between two, maybe three revisions, they've pretty much got it down.
Yeah, which I think probably separates you with some of your competitors, and it's that full service that you guys provide. That's very similar, working from the cradle, from the outset, throughout the that practice owner's life, depending on what they want to do, at some point in time down the road.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a terrific design service that we have available for our customers, and it's complimentary for the doctor. All that we ask for in return is their equipment business, and
Yeah,
you're buying a practice, you're building a practice, you're going to buy the equipment anyway. Why not buy it from us and get, your office design for free?
right. You get the design. Maybe you're gonna buy some equipment from you. But what I think is most critical, what's been most successful for me, is the relationship that they're going to have, the resource, and resources that Patterson brings to a practice owner. And that relationship, what their customer liaison, I think is invaluable.
Absolutely. I mean, we
know,
spend so much time with our doctors over the 2.5 days at GPS, and you know, a lot of times they're not just customers; they turn out to be friends. And
right,
we
right.
get invited to graduations, and I was invited to a grand opening up in Rochester earlier this year. So it's really humbling and heartwarming to kind of
Yeah,
be a part of that practice's family as their distribution representative.
yeah. It's nice to mix, the personal relationship with business, because then it doesn't feel like work at the end of the day. You're really enjoying, the people that you're working for and working with.
Yeah, and like I said before, as much as there's technology and AI, it's still very much a people buy from people
Yeah,
business. And I've noticed also in 30 years, it's really hard to never see somebody again. Between this company buys that company, or this rep moves to that company. Um, so it's a terrific industry to be a part of, and really hard to get out.
right. You're like Michael Corleone. Once you're in, you can't
Right.
get out. That's
That's
it.
it.
Yeah. Well, Chris, it's great speaking with you today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to getting together with you in person real soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Peter.